Ladies and gents, how are you doing? I'm going to struggle with today's headline because yesterday's video got pulled down with a very, very flimsy rationale, claiming that because I merely mentioned the fact that a bloke apparently wanted to scatter himself across Dam Square, that I was somehow promoting people harming themselves. So clearly I'm on watch. I mean, I have been for years. Oh, and I apologise for it disappearing. If you want to watch it, I'll put it on Rumble. I'll put a link down there. It's ludicrous that they pulled it down, but we all know how this game works, which incidentally leads me into the headline that I'm going to struggle to even say on this platform. I'll do my best. Russell Brand charged with surprise sex and, you know, one of them assaults that I guess some people do with the cocks out. Does that work? Right then, we all saw this coming 20 miles away, didn't we? Le Pen's been nicked on trumped-up charges. The Tates have been nicked on trumped-up charges. It looks like anybody who publicly speaks out against the Stalin-esque world that we're living in these days gets nicked for something. I can only be thankful that I'm a paltry, small fry YouTuber with less than 100,000 subscribers, because it sort of feels like once you get into the millions, they will find you and they will do you for something. Find me the man and I'll find you the crime. Like the Spanish Inquisition, if every member of the team had purple hair and a load of metal shit in the face. Suffice it to say, I'm somewhat distressed that I have to defend Russell Brand. This is another bloke who spent decades as a screaming lefty and then was dragged into our side of the argument, kicking and screaming because of the facts of the matter, which is there seems to be some sort of authoritarian globalist cabal running the entire world, the mainstream media, all of the news and radio networks, all of the print media. Basically, they're in charge and we have to do as we're told. So I'm going to read you the story and then I'm going to tell you why, in my humble opinion, just like with everybody else that stands against the lunatics running the entire world these days, it is definitely a trumped-up charge. You have to trust your gut and your common sense when every single mainstream media outlet and government agency just constantly lies to you all the time. So despite having no real desire to defend Russell Brand, well, I think I'm going to end up doing it. Okay, here's the story by Nua Nanji, the culture reporter, and I'm sure Nua Nanji from the BBC will definitely be impartial. Russell Brand has been charged with all kinds of diddling, which apparently took place between 1999 and 2005. There you go. First red flag. 1999 and 2005. You mean when he was a galloping lefty and he was always going on lefty protests? Then. Weird how they didn't say anything then, isn't it? And they didn't say anything in 2006 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 or 11 or 12. They just started coming out of the woodwork when he started having problematic opinions. The other thing to think about is, how do you prove it when it took place over 20 years ago? 1999. So they're going to prove it, despite the fact it took place 26 years ago. Everyone was surprised when Monica Lewinsky whipped out a crusty dress from a few years earlier. 1999, I think that's a stretch. Even if one of these victims has actually got some material evidence, doesn't jizz turn to dust after about 14 years? Are they going to pull out some mummified baby batter in court? Brand has been interviewed multiple times by police since an investigation by the Sunday Times in 2023, again 25 years after this stuff happened, and definitely after he came out against the state and the WHO and Tedros and the EU and everybody else, demanding individual liberty for people who had been forced to stay in their houses and inject themselves with things they didn't fancy. In a new video posted on X this afternoon, Brand said, "What I never was the obvious. I have never engaged in non-consensual activity. I'm going to have the opportunity to defend these charges in court and I'm incredibly grateful for that." Well, Russell's dafter than he looks then, because you don't get a fair hearing in court these days, do you? Rather than bore myself elucidating the many reasons as to why you definitely don't get a fair day in court, for example by pointing out that dozens of other EU parliamentarians and British parliamentarians engaged in the exact same practices as Marine Le Pen, none of them got 4 years in the clink. Francis Bayou did it, look him up. Diverted 1.4 million in EU funds. But he's a centrist, so he got acquitted. That's the legal system we're dealing with. It is Stalin-esque. I don't use the term lightly, but that's what it is. If you go against the globalist sociopaths, they will get you on trumped up charges and they will lock you up. So Russell Brand is deluding himself if he thinks he's going to get a fair trial in court. The fact that there's no material evidence, and by definition it's a he said, she said, but it's 25 years old, isn't worth a wank. They will lock him up. I guarantee you that. The Metropolitan Police allege that in 1999 a woman got diddled in Bournemouth. In 2001 a woman was assaulted in Westminster. In 2004 a woman was orally surprised in Westminster. And in 04 and 05 a woman was assaulted in Westminster. We have concluded that Russell Brand should be charged with offences including blah blah blah. These relate to reported non-recent offences involving 4 women that they could have dug up from anywhere. Right, I'm not going to bore you and read the whole thing. Let's just do this logically and rationally, alright? Instead of reading the propaganda from the BBC and definitely not wishing to side with Russell Brand in any way, let's just approach this in a cold and calculating manner and then go with our gut, shall we? Because in this day and age, that's all you can do. 3 questions need to be answered. Is there any material evidence? Is there a powerful motivating factor for the women involved to be telling lies? And most importantly, would an extremely wealthy, very famous Hollywood actor, because that's what he was at the time, he was at the height of his fame in the early 90s, would he need to go prowling the streets looking for innocent victims when everybody knows that if you're a famous Hollywood actor, women with questionable virtue fling themselves at you 24/7. That's why Donald Trump made his grab 'em by the flaps comment when he was on the bus. It was a quip about the state of the world we live in, that if you're extremely famous and rich, everywhere you go, birds throw themselves at you. Can some rich and famous men use their power and their authority and the position to sexually assault women? Of course they can. But the fact this took 25 years to come out, and it was only after he came out against the powers that be, and women used to throw themselves at him constantly anyway, and there's not going to be any material evidence, suggests to me that either he's definitely innocent, or, worst case scenario, it's possible he was improper in some ways, but you can't convict people and send them to prison for a very long time on flimsy evidence. It has to be beyond any reasonable doubt, and the fact that these birds waited 26 years is reasonable doubt. At the end of the day, if you're a woman, I certainly know lots of virtuous women, if they were attacked, they'd go to the police very quickly, because if you don't do that, you're complicit in allowing a sex criminal to wander the street and victimise other women. No part of it adds up to me. The timing is completely off. And I just do not see how any even remotely impartial observer can read that story and come to the conclusion that he should be in court on flimsy charges that happened almost 3 decades ago, when he's been very aggressively disagreeing with the powers that be for the last 4 or 5 years. That's what I think. And I've got no dog in this hunt. I don't know Russell Brand. I don't particularly like Russell Brand, but I at least think he followed his gut and switched his political allegiance and his opinions when eventually he did this, when faced with insurmountable amounts of evidence. If putting my opinion across in a polite and reasonable fashion means that my burgeoning media career gets shut down in flames today as a result of the machinations of the globalist sociopaths that obviously also have a strangely powerful say in what goes on this platform amongst many others, so be it. But that's my 2 cents. I'd like to know what you think about it. I'll finish up by saying, yeah, Russell, you think you're going to get a fair trial, son? It's 2025. You look like you've been paying attention for the last few years. You think you're going to walk on this? You've stood against Tedros and the boys, Russell. Not only will they happily lock you up, they will purposely put you in a cell with Randy Ron, the particularly burly sex offender with very large hands. That's what they're going to do to you, Russell. I guarantee it. Because evidence doesn't matter, does it? And Elon Musk and Donald Trump and Russell Brand and the Tate and everybody else that's come out against this evil scheming that seems to be going on all around the world has found out to the cost what happens to you. Musk's a great example. Beloved by the left. Democrat voter for 3 decades. And now 25% of society genuinely thinks he's a full-blown fascist dictator. The things I've read about him on X in the last couple of weeks blows your mind. Like he's more reviled than the Austrian painter and Benito Mussolini. The world's gone mad. But free trials, independent thought, an impartial judiciary, those things, they died many years ago, Russell. So you're in bother. But that's just my 2 cents. Let me know what you guys think. I'll put the story in the description, and I'll also put a link to Rumble where I'll upload the video that was needlessly, pointlessly, and totally unfairly pulled off the platform yesterday. All right, thanks for watching. See you all soon. Toodle pip. Cheers.